So one of the tips that I like to give everybody is spares. Obviously, in this game, it's really fun to throw strikes, and the thing that I think upsets most of us is missing the easy spares. But a lot of times when I ask people, well, where do you stand to shoot this? They kind of give me a dazed and confused look, and then they don't really have an answer for me. I think it's very important to develop a spare system. That way, anytime you leave a 10 pin, you know where you stand. Anytime you leave a 6 pin, you know where you stand, a 4 pin, etc. It just makes it where it's one less thing that we have to think about in an already very challenging game. So when I shoot the 10 pin, everywhere I go, regardless of the pattern, I stand on 30 and my ball's somewhere right around the middle arrow, 18 to 20. Pretty firm, not really a crazy amount of rotation, and just simply try to hit the 10 pin. One of the simplest things that will help improve your spares is investing in a spare ball. It's probably the cheapest ball on the market that you're going to purchase. However, I think it is one of the most beneficial ones that you'll use. They're designed to go straight. They help take the lane pattern out of play. And I'd say without a spare ball, I would probably miss a lot more spares. Right around 20, that was a smidge left, which kind of explains why I hit the left side of the spares. But having a spare system in place just simply makes it so much easier to repeat. You'd be surprised how many people I talk to, they're like, well, I made the first 10 pin I shot at, I missed the next 3, and then you sit and you watch them, and one shot they started with their feet on 25, one shot they started with their feet on 30, and then you kind of point out like, well, hey, you were 5 boards different. That probably explains why you missed your spares. Doing this alone will increase your average pretty quickly and make those 3-game league sets a lot more enjoyable. So now we're gonna go over just a couple of basic spares and how I like to shoot them. The way I shoot them is going to be a little bit different than the way you shoot them, as we all have our own things that we like to do, certain angles we like to use. For instance here, I'm going to shoot the 3-6-10, but I'm going to shoot it from much further to the right than most people do. It's just a thing that I prefer to do. It's a little easier for me to keep my hand up the back of it. And for me personally, it takes my chances of chopping the spare down a lot, just considering using a little less angle and then getting the ball a little more end over end in this spot. So for me, I always line it with my feet right around 10, and I'm basically just trying to roll it right up 10. There might be a little bit of shape to it, just kind of depending on what we're balling on. But generally speaking, if it's down 10, we're gonna make the spare. Now that's just something that I developed. A lot of guys shoot that spare from the left. I have a tendency to chop it that way. This is the way that through my many hours of practice that I've been able to figure out how to chop the spare a little less often and increase my scores. All right, so the last spare we're gonna talk about today is the 4 pin. So I see a lot of people shoot this really, really straight. One thing that I've been taught just throughout the years is a little bit of angle on the spare shots allows for a little bit of miss room. Obviously we're not perfect, we do try to be, but you wanna factor in those errant shots that do happen. So when I shoot this 4 pin, I'm gonna shoot it from about the middle of the lane. I'm gonna have a little bit of angle, that way I do have some miss room. So I'm standing on 18, and because I'm shooting a left side spare, most of the time when we're bowling as a two-handed player or even just a high rev player, we're throwing the ball left to right. So for me, I actually close my hips down by having my right foot a little further in front of my left foot, just to help get my body angled towards that 4 pin to throw it as straight as possible at the spare. It's just important, I think, to have a little bit of angle. While we can all probably make the 10 pin throwing it down the 5 board pretty easy, I would say most people would miss it out of 100 times, way more with no angle as opposed to shooting it cross lane and giving yourself a little bit of miss room. All right, so the second tip of today, access rotation. Kind of when we use it, why we use it, why do I want to change it, why don't I just want to use the same thing all the time. A basic rule of thumb that I like to use is the closer that I get to the right gutter for a right-handed player, the more end over end rotation I would like to have, simply because my ball doesn't have to cover as many boards. Now, throughout the block or throughout your league night, as you're moving left, you generally need a little bit more access rotation, a little more rotation to help cover the extra boards that your ball is having to now cover as it's going down the lane. Generally speaking, the more boards your ball's covering, the more access rotation you're going to have, whether you know that you're doing it or you're not doing it. I think if you focus on that, you'll actually realize, like, man, it's crazy. The closer I get to the gutter, the less I rotate it, and the more I get to the left gutter, then the more I tend to have more access rotation. So we're bowling on a typical house pattern today. We're gonna go ahead and throw one pretty straight right around the 9-10-ish zone with very minimal access rotation. And what you're gonna notice is the shape when this ball changes direction is gonna be pretty smooth. Notice there wasn't a whole lot of shape down lane there. It's important whenever you're rolling it and you're close to the gutter, it just makes it easier to go through the pins. A little less risky when you make a bad shot. You're not gonna leave those crazy 4 counts and 3 churches and wild things like that. But it's important to control that, because if you're able to control your axis rotation, I think it'll allow you an easier transition period as you're migrating left throughout league nights. So this next shot here will probably just be, if I'm walking into the center, I'm gonna throw my first shot of the day. Just kind of like my medium axis rotation point. And here the ball's gonna shape a little bit more than the previous shot, but it still shouldn't be too drastic of a change down lane. I mean, that's the simple one. That's the one that if I was just to walk into any bowling alley in the world, that's the axis rotation that I'm gonna start with, to kind of give myself an idea of kind of what the lane's calling for. I mean, it's just a really good starting point for me personally. So now this next one here, we're gonna increase our axis rotation. Probably not to our maximum, not our max potential here, but we are going to rotate a little bit more. Now you're gonna notice I am gonna throw it a little bit slower, just because with the ball having a lot more side rotation than previously, it needs time to find that friction on the lane. And also here, as the ball makes its change of direction at the end of the pattern, it'll be a much sharper change of direction due to the fact that we do have a lot more axis rotation on the ball. That ball is really sharp through the pins. And it's just one of those things where as you migrate left, your ball's covering more and more and more boards, going left to right. And you need that extra help to get the ball to make the corner. It's a simple thing. The closer you get to the right gutter, the less axis rotation you'll need, and the closer you get to the left gutter, the more axis rotation you'll need. One of the keys to throwing a lot of strikes, or you wonder, how do these guys throw these 10, 12, 14, 18 baggers? And a lot of guys will tell you it's all about watching your ball go through the pins. You always ask yourself when you leave that 10 pin, or you leave that 4 pin, why? That's kind of the thing we're looking for. We're trying to figure out the why. How come I left this 10 pin? How come I left this 4 pin? And I think it's very important to watch your ball go through the pins. If your ball is starting to deflect and it looks like it's attacking the 10 pin, and you're wondering why you're leaving that flat 10, there's a couple different reasons. But now if you at least know how your ball is going through the pins, you can kind of start working the lane backwards a little bit to decide, well, did that ball hook too early? Did it not hook enough? But did it hook too far down the lane? Which will then help you kind of figure out what's your next step to be able to now throw another strike based off of your previous result. Based off of that shot, driving a little hard, leaving the 4 pin. It ran over the 8 pin pretty heavy, but as you can tell, it was a little high on the pocket. So based off of that previous shot, that tells me the lane's starting to break down a little bit. It kept all of its energy going through the pins. So I'm gonna throw this next shot. I'm gonna make a 2-board move with my feet, and that should get us back right into the 1-3 and splitting the 8-9. That last shot, I was around 25 with my feet. I'm gonna actually move 3 boards. That was a pretty high 4 pin. We're gonna try to get rid of that pesky 4 pin. Split the 8-9 just like that. So based off of that particular shot, I'm probably not gonna move for another few more frames. Now say we were to throw another shot and we were to have like a messenger 9 pin or something. That kind of tells me, hey, my ball's starting to hook a little bit too much, which then I would then make another board move. It's very important. The way your ball goes through the pins can give you a lot of information about what your bowling ball is actually doing going down the lane, whether it's burning up and losing all of its energy, whether the ball is simply not strong enough, whether you haven't moved and it's time to move your feet a little bit. So paying attention to the way your ball goes through the pins can really help you change your ball reaction pretty easily without making too many drastic changes. Based off of that last shot, ball's burning up a little bit. So this kind of tells me one of 2 things. I'm either going to need to add a little bit more axis rotation and or just switch to a ball that has a little bit cleaner cover stock on it to allow it to store a little bit more energy and be able to make a sharper change of direction. So that last shot was with the phase 2. Based on that result, I would probably go ahead and make a ball change. With what I have today, I have an Optimum Idle Pearl with me. So I would go ahead and make that move, probably move my feet a couple boards to the left, and I think that would give me the desired shape that I'm looking for. So the last shot, feet were right around 26, 27. So we're gonna go ahead and move them to 29. And this ball should get through the front of the lane a little bit easier, which then allow it to have a little more change of direction down lane. Ooh, As you can see, that ball is definitely a lot sharper off the end of the pattern. Based off that last shot, I would probably go ahead and move another 1 or 2 with my feet. It was a pretty good guess off of the 2.8 with the phase 2, but that's just kind of an idea of how watching your ball go through the pins can really help you dictate what your next move is. So not every strike's the same. It's one of those things where you've got to use that information that you're getting from the pins. It's free information and you get it every shot to then really help you decide what that next move is to continue with your 5, 6, or 7 bagger that you've got working.